Okay, let's dive into some prep work now. I have the back of the dress here with the wrong side facing up, and you'll see that there are two notches on either side of your dress panels. You just want to focus on that first notch for now. That's going to be where we create an alignment mark for our waist channel. Here I'm using a long measuring tape. In the future, if I were to do this again, I would just tape down one side of the measuring tape. It just makes it easier since I can't have both hands holding the measuring tape still. But I also like to use a quilter's ruler in conjunction with a regular ruler. I feel like that usually allows me to reach all the way across the back of the dress panel. Anyway, once we have that back alignment line made, I will match up the front dress panel to the side at the side seam, and specifically we're again going to match that first notch up with the first notch on the back of the dress panel. And then we're going to use a ruler to continue that straight line from the back onto the front bodice. I usually like to go just a little bit more than halfway across the front bodice. Your channel probably won't extend that far, but it's still good to have that just in case it does. Okay, and we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other side, which we'll skip past really quickly here. And now we're going to transition from using muslin to our red corduroy, which I'm really excited about using. Okay, we're going to finish the raw edges of all four pocket bags, and this is what it will look like afterward. And now we're going to attach those pocket bags to the dress panels. You should see two notches on your dress panels. The first one we drew the line at. The second one is what you're going to use to align the pocket bag. You want the top of the pocket bag to match up to that second notch. And we will clip that in place. And once we do that, we're going to finish the raw edge of the dress panel attaching the pocket bag, as you can see here. And you'll want to finish that with a serger or a zigzag stitch. Next, we're going to flip the pocket bag away from the dress panel and press. And the next step is going to be understitching the pocket bag. That just means to sew a straight stitch really close to the edge, and it's going to make sure that whenever we have the dress on, the pocket bags don't show on the outside. And make sure you're catching the serged or finished edge when you understitch. And that's what that should look like, and I'm showing you that I did indeed catch that serged edge underneath. Now we're going to work on stay stitching the curved edges of the dress panels. That's going to include the armhole and the neckline. The reason why we're doing this is to prevent any stretching as we're working with the fabric, as those areas can be more susceptible to stretching. Now we're going to finish the center front of the front dress panels. You do that with a serger or a zigzag stitch, and that's what that should look like. Now we're going to flip that over so that we have the wrong side of the fabric facing up, and we're going to press that finished edge in by 1 centimeter. This is going to align our top stitching whenever we get around to installing the zipper. Again, you'll want to measure that at 1 centimeter and press. And you'll want to make sure that you do this on both of the front dress panels. Let's get started on the waist channel. For some of the sizes, including mine, the waist channel is just a little too long to be able to be cut on the fold. So instead, I cut it in two separate pieces, added an extra centimeter of seam allowance at the fold line, and sewed those together. I'm now ironing that seam flat, and now we will work on the rest of the pressing for the waist channel. First, we'll fold in the edges by 1 centimeter, and you'll do that on both ends of the waist channel. After that, we will work on folding down the top and folding up the bottom of the waist channel. You'll want to do that all along the length of the waist channel. This pattern piece can also be replaced with double or single fold bias tape. If you're going to use the recommended 3/4 inch width elastic, then you should opt for 1 inch bias tape. If you're using a heavier weight fabric, something that might be helpful for when you get around to threading the elastic is using a different fabric for the waist channel pattern piece. Just something that's a little bit more lightweight. Again, that will make it so that it's a little bit easier to thread your elastic later on. If you've already cut out and are committed to the heavyweight fabric that you're using for the rest of your dress, don't worry about it. I've been able to thread my elastic easily in all 7, actually at 8 of these dresses now. So you'll be just fine. It might just take a little bit of extra time. Okay, and once you're done with that, this is what your channel should look like. And we'll just go ahead and set that aside for now. Okay, I promise we are almost done with this prep work, but it's going to make it so much easier once we start assembling the rest of the dress. So we're going to take one collar piece and place it so the wrong side is facing up, and we're going to fold up the bottom edge of the collar by 1 centimeter. You can tell which side is the bottom by looking for the notches. You want to make sure that you're pressing the notched side upwards. And again, you're only going to do this to one of your collar pieces. And this one is going to be your top collar, or the one that shows on the outside whenever you have your collar flipped down. Okay, the last step, we have our sleeve here. What we're going to do is pre-press the sleeve hem. This is going to make it easier to fold and do the actual hem when we have the sleeve inserted to the armhole. So what I'm doing here is just measuring out 2 inches twice, so 4 inches total. And we're going to fold the sleeve hem up by 2 inches and press, and then we'll fold it by another 2 inches and press again. Okay, now onto the fun part. We're going to place the back panel piece right sides facing up, and we will place the front dress panels right sides facing down. So you want to make sure that the right sides are touching each other. And we're going to pin those together at the shoulder seam. Once we've done that, we're just going to sew a straight stitch across the shoulder seam and finish that raw edge with a serger or a zigzag stitch. Now that the shoulders are attached, we'll go ahead and attach the side seams and clip the fabric in place. And whenever we sew this together, we'll want to make sure that we're sewing around the curve of the pocket bag. Wonderful. We're going to now press that seam open at the top and the bottom of the pocket bag. There's going to be a little bit that you're not able to press open, but don't worry about that. It's totally fine and to be expected. It's going to be a little clunky to work with, but we're going to open up the dress as much as we can. And that's so that we can finally attach our waist channel. There should be a notch on the waist channel, and that's going to align with the first notch on the side seam of the dress, wherever we made that alignment line at the very beginning. We're going to pin that in place and do that along the entirety of the dress. I'm not going to show it in this video, but once you have the elastic channel pinned in place, you're going to try the dress on as is and assess whether or not you like where the channel is hitting. Wherever the channel is now is roughly where it's going to be whenever you put in the elastic towards the end. So you want to make sure that the channel is, like the front of the channel specifically, is hitting at the right spot. If you have a bigger bust, as I do, I usually like to angle my channel down a little bit more. I have heard from some of my testers who have smaller busts that they actually like to angle the channel up more, so that there's just a little bit less fabric around the top. Something that another tester did was to actually put a belt or elastic wrapped around your waist just to get a sense of where you like the channel to hit. And that also revealed that for some people, having the back curve a little bit is something that they prefer. So that's also an option. I'd recommend, as always, making a sample garment, and that will give you a chance to assess the fit. Before you cut into your good fabric, so then you have a better sense of, okay, next time I should, make a curve at the back, or I should make the channel a little bit longer or shorter, or angle it down or up. So many different options here, and it's all just going to depend on your unique body. So just keep that in mind. There is no one right way for this channel to be attached. Now that we have it pinned down, we're going to sew along the top and the bottom of the waist channel. I usually like to start at the top and then do the bottom of it afterwards. Otherwise, I find that sometimes as I sew the bottom, it starts to shift a little bit upwards, and is no longer aligned with the line we made earlier. But make sure you do not sew the short end of the channel. You're going to get a little finger wag for that. Okay. And now we're going to start working on the zipper. If this is your first time working on a zipper, you're going to make it through. I promise it. Okay. We're going to make a mark 1 centimeter down from the center front. And that's just where we're going to align the top of the zipper. We're laying it down here so that we can also get a sense of where the zipper ends and make another mark 1 centimeter above the end of the zipper. And now you should have 2 marks on your front dress panels. Make sure you do this on both sides. One mark will be 1 centimeter down from the front, and one mark will be 1 centimeter above where the zipper ended. And we're going to attach the front dress panels together just at the bottom. So you're going to sew a straight stitch from the hem up to that line that we made, the line that aligns with the bottom of the zipper. We're going to, again, just sew a straight stitch there. So it'll be a little bit like a V once it's done, like this. Okay. And we're getting to a good spot. We're going to start working on actually inserting the zipper now. But first, we're going to press because we always press our seams as much as we don't want to sometimes. We will do that. Pressing is really important actually, so make sure that you do that. We're going to flip the dress so that it's right sides out. Now we're actually getting to the zipper. Okay, this is where the fun starts. We're going to take our zipper, open it up, and we're going to face it face down or right sides down. The right side is the side where the zipper pull is, and we're going to align the top of the zipper teeth to the top alignment line we made earlier. As we're pinning this in place, we want to make sure that the zipper teeth are pointing away from the center front edge. Something I like to do sometimes, and I'll show this in just a little bit, is to, after I pin it together to the center front, I'll flip the zipper teeth like towards myself just to make sure that the zipper seems like it's in the right spot, like where a zipper would naturally fall. I'll show you what I mean in just a minute, but it should look something like this before you sew it down. And whenever you do sew it down, you just want to make sure that you're sewing as close to the zipper teeth as you can. Don't sew over the zipper teeth, otherwise that will impact the ability of you to actually functionally use the zipper. But just as close as you're comfortable with getting. It won't be too big of a deal if you have a lot of zipper tape showing. And in order to make it easier on ourselves, we will use a zipper foot, which comes with most sewing machines. So I would recommend digging that out. So yes, this is what it looks like after you've sewn the zipper down. This is just one side of the zipper. I'll show you how to go about doing the second side. We're going to lay our fabric flat and take our zipper, flip it so that you have the right side facing up, and then flip it again so that the right side is facing down on the other side of the dress panel. It'll look like that. And again, we'll pin this in place and sew a straight stitch down the length of the zipper, again, close to the zipper teeth. And you'll also want to make sure that when you're sewing this down, you're stopping about a centimeter and a half above the end of the zipper, or rather the end or where the V is that we created. And this is what I mean by flipping the zipper to test whether or not the zipper teeth are facing the right way before I sew it down. Once we sew that down, we're going to have a fully functioning zipper. But as you can see here, I did not heed my own advice and I sewed my V a little too close to the zipper, to the bottom of the zipper. So thankfully, that's a really quick fix. We're just going to take out a couple of the stitches of the V, and that should allow me to pull through the bottom of the zipper to the wrong side of the dress. Just like that. Okay. Now that we have that done, we can flip the dress so that the right side is facing up again. And now we're going to go ahead and top stitch around the zipper after we press again. Okay, so press first and then we'll do the top stitching. We're going to top stitch in a rectangle. I like to sew a little bit underneath the bottom of the zipper and go back up instead of sewing over the zipper teeth, especially when I'm using a metal zipper like this. And it will be easier to do the top stitching if you have the zipper open. Now onto the collar. We're going to take our two collar pieces and place them right sides together. I currently have the the top collar, which is the side with the folded edge on the top. And you want to make sure that you're catching that folded edge when you're sewing. Now that that's sewn together, we're going to clip the edges of the collar and also trim off some of the excess fabric on the top of the collar. This is just going to reduce some of the bulk, which is going to make it easier to actually flip the collar when we get to that in a second. And by clipping the corners of the collar, that's going to allow us to hopefully get a pointier end to our collar. And this is how you go about poking out the tips of the collar. You'll want to use something a little dull. So I've heard people use paintbrushes. I'm personally going to use the bottom of my tweezers to poke that out. So again, we can get as pointy of a collar as possible. And once we've done that, it's time to flip the rest of the collar out and press. I like to press the inside of the collar first. I find that that helps with getting the rest of the collar flat whenever I have the wrong sides facing. Okay, and we have a visitor. This is Goose, always with me at my sewing table. We're going to take the side that is not folded and attach that around the neckline of the dress with the right sides facing. There should be 2 notches on your collar, and each one is going to match up with the shoulder seams. And then the front of the collar should be flush with the center front of the dress panel. You want to make sure that you're sewing only the side that is not folded and you're not catching that folded edge in your stitches. It's possible that you'll need to ease the neckline into the collar to make it fit. Before we sew the top collar down, we're going to press the seam allowance up and go ahead and choose a tag for the back of your dress if you'd like. I have many here, but I decided to go with my one that says Yeehaw because I felt like that went better with the fabric. Tags are always not a necessity, but they're really fun to have. But anyway, we're going to take that folded edge of our collar and pull it down so that it covers the stitches that we just made in the last step when we attached the under collar. We're going to pin the tag in place and also just go ahead and pin the rest of the collar down along the entirety of the neckline. Once it's pinned down, we're just going to sew a straight stitch across the bottom of the collar. And this is what it's going to look like when the collar is all attached. And the last step is just going to be top stitching around the collar here. We're almost done here. We're onto the sleeves. So you're going to unfold the pressed edges that we did earlier, align the sides of the sleeve together so that you're kind of making a tube, and sew a straight stitch down. You'll also want to go ahead and finish that edge when you're done. We're going to flip the sleeve so that the right side is facing out and insert that into the body of the dress. But first I wanted to make a note of the notches here. So you should have 2 notches in the back and then 1 notch in the center that's going to align with the shoulder seam, and then another notch on the front. When we insert this sleeve into the dress, we're going to want to have the dress inside out, and just like we had on the sleeve, you should see various notches on your armhole. Again, it's going to be 2 in the back, 1 at the center to match up with the shoulder seam, and then 1 on the front. We're going to go ahead and place the sleeve into the armhole and match up those notches. You want to make sure that the right side of the sleeve is facing the right side of the dress. You'll also notice as you're doing this that there is a little bit of excess fabric at the sleeve head. That's completely normal and should be there. It's basically just going to add a bit of 3-dimensionality to the sleeve so that it doesn't fall just straight down. And when I'm easing fabric in, I like to use pins just to be extra sure that I am not sewing down the fabric in a way that creates puckers or tucks on the right side whenever the sleeve is sewn in. After we sew this sleeve, we're going to also finish off the raw edge with a serger or a zigzag stitch. Maybe everyone knows this already, but you can also usually take out the bottom portion of your sewing machine, and it makes it so that it's much easier to insert the armhole and sew around it. Wonderful. We're going to go ahead and pull that sleeve out and fold up the pressed edges again, and we'll sew a straight stitch along the top here. Great, so now we're going to move on to threading the elastic. We'll attach a safety pin to one end of the elastic and just, again, thread that through. As you can see, I did use a heavier weight fabric for my channel, so it's going to take me a little bit of extra time to get that through. But again, it really wasn't that painful. I didn't show it here, but I did put the dress on and I pulled on the elastic on either side to get a sense of how tight I wanted the elastic. I marked that point with a pen and then pulled the elastic to that point and sewed it down. And then you can just trim off the excess elastic that you have. If your elastic is being extra fiddly like mine was, you can also sew down just one side of the elastic before adjusting the other. This is totally up to you. It just might require some more manual redistribution of the gathers afterwards. Okay, we've made it to the final step, which is the hem. We're going to position the dress so that we have the right side facing up again, and we're going to take our bias tape or hem facing and attach it to the bottom. What you'll do is, on mine, I have a double fold bias tape, so I just unfolded one of those folds and attached it along the circumference of the dress, around the entirety of the hem of the dress. And you'll just pin that in place and sew it down. You're going to follow the seam line of the bias tape. That just makes it so much easier. After we have it all pinned in place, I just trimmed off the excess bias tape. And you can attach your bias tape however you prefer, if you have a preferred method. I just tuck it into the other side of the bias tape, basically. I don't know if that's the best way, but it works for me. But yeah, as I said, we're going to sew along that folded edge, as you can see here. And now we'll just take the bias tape and fold that down away from the dress. And we'll iron all the way across the hem of the dress. And this is just going to make it easier for us to turn it over in the next step. Fold up the bottom edge so that you don't see the bias hem facing from the right side. You can make sure that you can't see that by having just a little bit of the right side of the fabric folded under as well. Okay, and the last step is just to edge stitch across the top of the bias tape here. And once you do that, you're done. You have a juniper dress.